Hello, my name is Anna Rose and I am a creative director at Ketchum, London. We believe in doing work that matters, and I'm coming to you from my office, my living room here in East London. Super excited to be joining the PR Summit, and thank you to Graffiti PR for inviting me here today. What I'm going to share with you today is some insights into how we can expect PR to transform, in particular what PR events may look like in the future, as a result of this widespread embrace of new technologies. So my background before I joined the world of PR, I worked in more traditional above-the-line advertising agencies, as well as digital and social agencies. So like many of you, kind of saw a lot of these technologies on the horizon. I don't think anyone could have expected the scale at which the general public have embraced so many of these new forms of technology. Even thinking back to when I was a kid, my photography teacher, when I was probably about 10, 11 years old, said to the class, you know, you're going to grow up in a world where it's normal to video call your friends and your family. And I was a pretty nerdy kid, like I knew how to code websites at that point, but I just couldn't comprehend how the internet would ever be fast enough for the pixels from my screen to reach your screen over here at a speed where we could have a conversation, a two-way conversation. And now look at us, you know, video calling is a huge part of our everyday for absolutely everyone, not just those at the more kind of early adopter end of the tech spectrum. And rather than marveling at how incredible it is that video technology exists at the level it does, I think, to be honest, we're all a little bit exhausted by it. Don't try and tell me that you don't have days where you just wish you could shut your laptop down and have a face-to-face conversation with your colleagues. We've all been there. So I think in this current climate, it's really difficult for us to make meaningful connections, and I don't just mean that on a human level. I also think it's particularly hard for brands and for products to create a meaningful connection with consumers and media. We've learned a lot, especially when it comes to events. We've learned how to be much more sustainable, not flying people around the world to attend big global events, and we've also learned to be a lot more inclusive and making sure that those product launches or those community events are accessible to the widest range of people from diverse backgrounds. And these are lessons that I think we should take with us as we build back better, which is the English phrase, or return to whatever the new normal is. Let's not forget to be sustainable, let's not forget to be inclusive, and let's not forget the expectations that consumers and media now have as a result of all these technologies being as available as they are. So let's start by talking about people and how we can bring people closer to the other people that they care about, and why it's important to do that. So I think the last year has really shifted our expectations on human relationships. We've seen the insides of our clients and our colleagues' homes. We've met their families, we've met their pets. This technology has brought us a lot closer to people that were otherwise untouchable. So I think some brands are using this in a really interesting way that I think we can continue to kind of learn from, and that is through video tutorials and finding an expert in a certain field, finding a voice of authority and really using them as a brand to create that connection, but also in a lot of examples teach us something about ourselves, about how we use a product. An example of this that I think is great is Brown are doing tutorials of how to shave your head, particularly in lockdown when the barbers were closed. Hopefully this is not an issue that we're going to have to face going forward, but just those tutorials of how to create a home office, or how to pick out the right level of SPF for your particular skin type. It's these conversations that we're now having with experts, whether that's on a one-to-one basis or on a one-to-broadcast basis, that I think we can expect to continue seeing, and that we can really think about. I think the other thing is really the ways in which that personal or one-to-one advice is offered. If you haven't played with it already, I would encourage you to download Clubhouse and have a little bit of a play with Clubhouse. It is a new audio-only app, and it has received quite a lot of media. When I say new, it's been around for over a year, but it's received quite a lot of media in the last month or so because of the types of people that are using it. So Elon Musk is on it quite a lot, but also we saw Mark Zuckerberg turn up for 15 minutes. And Mark Zuckerberg is the kind of person that you see behind a very carefully curated facade. He shows us what of him he wants to share, and I think because of that there has been some criticism of him in the public, that he, memes of him being a robot. He doesn't feel like a human that other humans can connect with. What was interesting about him turning up on Clubhouse is it was an unfiltered version of Mark Zuckerberg, and it was 15 minutes where people felt like they could really interact with him on a human, unscripted, uncurated level. So I think we're going to see a lot more of these types of apps. I mean, Zuckerberg's already made or started making a Facebook version of Clubhouse, so there we go. But I expect to see a rise in the type of technology that allows us to connect in a more intimate way. And voice is one of those ways where if you're not looking at someone in the eye, sometimes it's easier to have a more honest conversation with them. So we should be looking at how brands can behave in the space, how ambassadors that we might be using could be utilised in the space, but also the pitfalls of that, and really understanding from a crisis perspective what could go wrong in a place where we know that people are coming into a company's CEO's home, or a celebrity ambassador's home, and having these kind of unfiltered conversations. Definitely one to think about. The final thing when we're talking about how to bring people closer to people is how to create meaningful connections between people and the loved ones that they've maybe not been able to connect with over the past year. So this is what I was kind of talking about when I say rather than building back the biggest event, like how can we build back events that are super small, like just me and my partner, you and your family, your neighbours, the people that live on your street or live on your block, and actually creating brand events that are for much smaller groups of people. And I think this is a really interesting place to play. I haven't seen a lot of it yet, but I'm hoping to do some work like this for our clients. I think one interesting example of this was Gucci. They did a partnership with North Face, and they launched the range of clothing on Pokemon Go. So they knew that they weren't going to have the traditional runway, they weren't going to have like an event that they could invite media to. And by launching the clothes on Pokemon Go, even if this isn't what they intended to do with that, they're inviting people to go out and play with the brand and actually have a meaningful conversation or a meaningful connection with the person that you're playing Pokemon Go with. And I think that's really fun, and I think there's loads of ways that we can look at the products that we're communicating about, look at the brands that we're creating and say, what is the fun thing that we could do here to facilitate a meaningful connection between two human beings on a much smaller scale? And could we do 1 million tiny events of two people rather than one big event, hoping that 2 million people will turn up. Let's talk about how we can bring people closer to product. I think probably a year ago we would have said the closest way to get to know a new product, to experience what it was like, or to really sell in the benefits of something, would be to send it to a person, have them see it in a shop, physically touch, hold, smell the thing in your hands. And that's, where a lot of those decisions were made. When you go to a shop is when you decide what you're going to buy. But the last year has taught us that if we can't go to shopping malls, the shopping malls are going to have to come to us. So I just wanted to talk through some of the insights that I think could be interesting for us to take forward from how shopping, and particularly how product launches, have changed over the last year. And like I said, I think we're seeing a lot more of that. The mall is in your phone, it's on Instagram, it's all around you. And that's really interesting, and not going to go away anytime soon. If you think of the Net-a-Porter, the Beauty of You event in January, it was a shoppable series of videos where you had celebrities like Kerr, no relation in case anyone was wondering, talking through their makeup routines or their skin routines, and all of those products were shoppable during that experience. On the more kind of extreme showy end of the spectrum, the Charlotte Tilbury example of websites that feel like shopping events, and you can almost like shopping TV was, see a host talking about different products, different features, and being able to shop live during that event. So this is not going to go away, and I think there is a huge opportunity as the kind of online and offline worlds begin to merge for us to think about how we can do physical events that maybe have this element of online shopping, or how we can bring some of the creativity of online shopping events to physical places. I think another trend that we've seen a lot of is the rise of podcasts, and particularly again in the beauty space. If you think about how many beauty podcasts there are now, the reason that they're so successful is because people are listening to them while they're in the bath, or while they're doing the makeup and doing their skincare routine, putting on, these are huge in England, I don't know if this is a global thing, the foot mask things that you put on your feet and then all your skin peels off. People love doing that and feeling like they're not alone in doing it, and being able to listen to a podcast and hear an expert or hear familiar voices talking about the stuff that you're doing makes you feel like you're not doing it alone. So again, we're talking about bringing people closer to product through a more human lens. And then finally, when we're talking about getting closer to products we love, I think we really need to look into mixed reality as a technology to bring products to life. So in the real world, I can look at this pair of scissors and I can see how functional it is. Maybe I can try cutting a piece of paper with it before I buy it. But in the virtual world, I can go into the metal and I can see where that metal came from. I can understand how it's put together, the construction of it. I can, maybe meet the person who designed the pair of scissors. And I think this level of detail about products is an expectation that certainly media who are in very particular categories are going to continue to expect. And the opportunity for us is to use mixed realities. So I'm talking about augmented reality, like Pokemon Go is augmented reality, as well as virtual reality, a combination of the two, to bring those two worlds together and allow people to go deep into a product at the same time that they're maybe experiencing it in the physical world. And I would love to see more of that, and I think we're due to see more of that, particularly as the AR on the phones that we carry around with us continues to evolve. And I also want to talk to you about purpose and how we can bring people closer to purpose campaigns that they really care about, and therefore cut through in culture, make sure that we're getting all of those headlines. That is, of course, our job at the end of the day. So in the last year, we've seen a bunch of purpose campaigns as a result of the global Black Lives Matter movement, as a result of the climate crisis and Greta Thunberg's response to that. Sustainability, diversity and inclusion are two purposes that I think a lot of brands have kind of acted upon, but they're not, of course, the only purposes out there. Obviously, so important to find an authentic reason for your brand or for your product to exist in that space. So, it makes sense for an electric car to be talking about sustainability. Doesn't make so much sense for an airline to be talking about sustainability. But then an airline might be able to talk about opening up the world again after COVID. So it's not to say that there's good or bad brands, but people are definitely expecting brands to stand for something. And, within a company's history, within even the leadership of a company, you should be able to find what is authentic to that company that they can then go out to the world and say, we're pushing this cause forward. So talking about how we can use technology for purpose-based campaigns, I think this is really interesting, especially when we have been so distant from each other. In a physical sense, I've seen some really exciting examples of technology creating communal experiences. For example, obviously the climate crisis protests, the Extinction Rebellion have been running for a couple of years now. Couldn't happen in the way that they have happened in the past. And someone made an app where you can see the history of the climate crisis by holding your phone up to Nelson's column in Trafalgar Square, and you can kind of have a mini experience in Trafalgar Square, which is the place in London where protests kind of inevitably end. Big marches always end in Trafalgar Square, so that place has a lot of significance for Londoners and for a lot of people in England as a place of protest. And I thought it was quite an interesting use of technology to say, even if we can't all be here together, we can all have this experience when we come here. In the US, I saw a similar example. So there are a bunch of statues that have been pulled down across the United States of America based on Confederate soldiers, and communities feeling like that's not a history that should be celebrated. Again, using AR, you can now hold your phone up to the plinths where the statues were, and instead of seeing the Confederate soldier who used to be on the plinth, seeing these amazing figures of the Black History movement. If you're wondering why this video has so many cuts in it, it's because I've lived in England for almost 10 years now, and I need to drink tea in between each take. Really hope you have enjoyed listening to this presentation as much as I enjoyed putting it together, and hopefully you've learned something about what we can expect as PR really transforms as a result of the widespread embrace of new technologies, particularly when we look at what events of the future might look like, at how we look at metrics that are not just based on the amount of people that are in a room, but actually how close people can get to other people, to products, and to the purposes that they care about. Unfortunately, we can't quite have a Q&A in this format. Also, I'm absolutely gutted that I don't get to explore Bucharest, so please invite me over at some point. I would love to meet you all in person, and in the meantime, you can find me on LinkedIn, Anna Rose Kerr, and enjoy the rest of the day, the exciting talks that you have coming up this afternoon.